Governor Bob Ferguson, Mr. I'm a fiscal hawk, elect me as governor, came out and announced that he would support an income tax in the state of Washington, and Democrats have every intention of getting it through this year. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that. So we knew this was coming, right? And Democrats have long wanted a tax on income. Washington state treats income as property per our state constitution. And people, it's actually a misnomer that an income tax is against the state constitution. It's not, but it has to be uniform. So if you're going to tax property, in this case income, then you have to tax it in a way that's uniform, and it's limited to 1%. For some reason, they don't want to try to do that. They want to try to do something that's blatantly unconstitutional. So what they're going to do, and what they're going to set out to sell to the populace is, don't worry about us taxing your income. We're only interested in taxing the income of millionaires.
As you all know, Washington has one of the most regressive tax systems in the entire country. We rank 50th, next to last among the 50 states and the District of Columbia, in the fairness and equality of our tax system. I know everybody here in this room understands this, but I want to be really clear to the people of the state of Washington. This means that those who make the least amount of money pay much larger shares of their income than those with the most resources. We are facing an affordability crisis. It is time to change our state's outdated, upside-down tax system to serve the needs of Washingtonians today. To make our tax system more fair, millionaires should contribute more towards our shared prosperity. To be clear, by millionaires, I mean people who make more than $1 million of income in a single year. In other words, it is not individuals whose net worth reaches that amount based on, for example, the value of their home.
Oh, doesn't that sound nice? Oh, none of us are millionaires, so why do we care? Why do we care if the government goes and taxes millionaires, tax the rich, pay their fair share? Well, they're lying to you. Governor Bob Ferguson came out after his press conference and he reiterated a bunch of times, I will not support an income tax for people who make less than $1 million a year. I will not support an income tax for people who make less than $1 million a year. I will not support. I don't believe him. I don't believe him. And what they're trying to do right now, wolf in sheep's clothing, is they're trying to say something, they're trying to push through something that they believe will be palatable to enough voters. But then once it's on the books, all bets are off. I wrote this article. I would encourage you, there's no paywall on it, to go read it on Patreon, Locals or X. And so in it, I have, point by point about exactly what Democrats are trying to do and all the lies that they're telling. So I absolutely encourage you to go read it. But the main point is this. Democrats have wanted a tax on income, just a general income tax on everyone. That has been a public policy position of theirs for as long as I've been a reporter here, and that's been 15 years. And certainly they've tried to get it going back further than that. So all these years, let's just call it 40 years, that they want an income tax. They want an income tax. We're one of 9 states in the nation that doesn't have one right now. We want an income tax. We want an income tax. We want an income tax. And now all of a sudden in 2026, in the middle of budget crisis, they're like, no, we don't want an income tax. We want a millionaire's tax. Why would they just suddenly change their mind after decades of saying publicly that they want to tax your income? Well, they wouldn't. They're just changing their strategy. And they know that the message of tax the rich, make the rich pay their fair share, has worked before. So what Democrats are anticipating is this. They know that it'll face a legal challenge, and they know that it'll likely face an initiative or a referendum. And they believe, and they would not introduce it if they thought otherwise, they believe that this will stand up to both. Now, I'm not going to accuse Democrats of counting votes on the state Supreme Court, but Democrats are counting votes on the state Supreme Court. They would not do this again if they didn't think that they had enough votes on the state Supreme Court. And in fact, we played a clip in December of Joe Fitzgibbon, who's the House Majority Leader. So he's the ranking Democrat in the House, just below the Speaker of the House. And he was saying, there's this 100-year-old state Supreme Court ruling that they use to consider income as property, and we just don't think that's valid anymore. So that's what they are expecting the state Supreme Court to do, to rule that income isn't property. So trust me, they already know that the state Supreme Court will rule in their favor because the state Supreme Court has already upheld an unconstitutional income tax, the tax on capital gains. This is blatant. The tax on capital gains passed in 2021. And capital gains, every other state in the nation and the IRS says capital gains is what? Income. Income. That's how they characterize it. Nope, not in Washington state. In 2023, the state Supreme Court upheld the capital gains tax and said it's not an income tax, it's what? An excise tax. So now, Washington state is the only state in the nation that considers taxing capital gains to be an excise tax and not an income tax. So we don't have to look too far backward to see that the state Supreme Court here, which is packed with progressives, is more than willing to uphold an unconstitutional tax if it'll serve the progressive agenda. So let's just put that aside. Now, the referendum or an initiative. I have no doubt that someone would be able to run a successful initiative and gather the necessary number of signatures to get income tax on the ballot. And voters in Washington state always reject income tax every time it's been on the ballot. The issue is it's going to be there as a millionaire's tax, not an income tax. It'll be there as a millionaire's tax. And voters had an opportunity to repeal a tax on capital gains. They didn't. Why? Because Democrats spent $40 million successfully painting it as a tax on the rich. The rich need to pay their fair share so we can fund basic services. So Democrats are very confident that if they can get this passed as a millionaire's tax, the state Supreme Court will sign off on it, voters will sign off on it, and then it is a done deal. Once an income tax is on the books, once an income tax is ruled constitutional, then all bets are off. Then it'll be very easy for them to amend it at will. And I give it 5 years, maybe, before it becomes a tax on every single Washingtonian's income. And so we have to make sure that our friends and family are not falling for this lie that this is just a tax on millionaires. Make sure they know the strategy here, the history here. Ask them, why would Democrats for decades support an income tax and all of a sudden say, no, we just want to tax the income of millionaires? See what they have to say to that. Bob Ferguson put out this video on social media, and he's saying we're going to take all the money that comes in from the millionaires tax and we're going to use it to reduce other taxes.
We must use those resources to provide tax credits for Washingtonians, to make sure that small business owners pay less in taxes. Those are things we can do with the revenue from a millionaire's tax.
Oh, isn't that nice? Okay, well, if he's going to use, even if we have an income tax, but we're paying less in the sales tax or the gas tax or all these other things, isn't it just a wash? Well, that's what Bob Ferguson's saying he wants to do with the money. Bob Ferguson also ran for office just 2 years ago saying he was going to be a fiscal hawk. And then 3 months into his term, he signed the largest tax increase in state history into law. So he can't be trusted. And Bob Ferguson's office put out this massive press release about the millionaire's tax. And at the very bottom, if you read it, they acknowledge that giving tax cuts in exchange for millionaire's tax probably isn't the same thing, the same agenda as legislative Democrats. So even the governor is acknowledging that that's not what legislative Democrats want to do. They just want to pile it on top of other taxes so they can spend more money. So the bottom line is they haven't earned your trust on anything. Bob Ferguson lost trust within 3 months when he completely became a different person than who he ran as, who he was elected as. And I can't remember in my time any sort of tax cut that Democrats have made in Olympia. In the middle of a budget crisis, you really think if they pass a new tax, they're going to go cut other taxes? Of course they're not going to. And what they do today isn't necessarily what they're going to do tomorrow. So make sure none of your friends and family are falling for it, because eventually this will wind up in front of voters, because Democrats are going to pass it. The state Supreme Court is going to rule it constitutional. And the only thing standing between all of us and an income tax is educated voters. We have to make sure they get there. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that.